Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast, where smart strength training meets real life. We're Dr. Matt and Nicole Klingler, founders of Village Fitness and Physical Therapy. Here, you'll learn what really works in the gym, at home, and for life. So today we're going to be answering some of the most controversial questions from our YouTube videos that we've put out. And we get some crazy things on the YouTube. Mostly it's people just commenting their life story with bad grammar and putting in what they do. But there's also some really insightful, thoughtful questions that I think a lot of people are asking. And we're going to get into. We're going to talk about how to exercise even if it hurts. We're going to talk about creatine and digestive issues that folks have. And we're going to talk about how to train heavy, even if you're on the older side.
Yeah. So the first question, kick us off, is I'm 75 years old and I'm concerned that lifting heavy weights could be dangerous for me. How do I proceed?
Well, first off, the older you are, the more cautiously you should approach training, the more intelligently you need to approach training. I always tell people it's still possible in your 50s, 60s, 70s, or even 80s to be lean, strong, and mobile. However, you need to train differently than you did when you were in your 20s. You know, when you're in your 20s and made of rubber and magic, as Coach Wesley at our Glendora location says, you can do whatever you want and get away with it.
It's true. That's why you get those, guys that come in. This is my favorite thing that I hear from some of our older male clients is they used to bench press 300 pounds and they squatted 400 pounds when they were in the high school weight room. Mm-hmm. And the reality is they might have done that, but their bodies were way more resilient and could handle stress, usually stress from poor form, because they probably didn't have a strength coach who knew how to teach them how to bench or squat properly. But they were young and they had a lot of, hormones. And so it's like your body recovers completely differently when you're in high school or college versus as you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond.
I remember this neighbor of mine named Eddie, and Eddie was 17 years old and he bench pressed every single day.
Dang.
Like a lot of bench press, and his chest just got huge and
Wow.
no injury. Just got freakishly strong. Like he got to the point where he was benching over 300 pounds at 17 years old. No issues. Again, rubber and magic. Compare that to the 65-year-old. It's like you need like 5 days off from a bench press session to recover sufficiently to be able to train again.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think heavy is relative. Heavy for someone in their 60s who hasn't done strength training for a long time, like that could literally be a 45-pound squat. Like that could be heavy enough to stimulate muscle growth. And then they need to, again, progressively overload. However, it needs to be challenging and controlled. And then I think the other component is that coaching and form become more important the older you get.
Yeah.
Like again, when you're younger, you can get away with a lot of things, but the older you get, like the more important it is that your form is, impeccable and that you aren't doing anything that is going to compromise you or put you in a position where it's like, you're more likely to get injured because you can't see this thing, or maybe you don't have as much mobility as you did at one point. So you're compensating in other ways. And so, supervision and coaching matter a ton, especially as we age. I think they matter, and anyone at any age can benefit from a coach. However, I think it does become more important the older you get if you really want to maximize strength with the least chance of getting injured.
Totally. So I would start at a weight that seems lighter than it needs to be. So if you're the 75-year-old that wants to start deadlifting, let's say, I'm using the 15-pound bar and 10 pounds on each side. So 35 pounds total. That should feel really easy. If it doesn't, you need even less weight. You need to start with maybe a kettlebell, a light kettlebell, lifting that off the ground. Once you've worked up to that 35-pound bar, then just add 5 pounds every time you do deadlifts every week. So you're going up by 5 pounds a week, 5 pounds a week, until you get to the point where it's like, I don't feel like I can maintain my form for all of the reps and still feel like I could do a few more reps. RERs, reps in reserve. And you should have a few more reps in reserve that you could do with good form. That's key, because gun to your head, just about everybody could do another rep of deadlifts or squats. I think we're capable a lot more than we think we are, but doing it with good form, Now, that's another question entirely, and will be a great guide to your training. As you get more advanced and proficient in your training, you may want to do things like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, where you're moving forward for 2 weeks and then you back off for a week. You move forward for 2 weeks and you back off for a week. And that just allows your body time to recover from the training. Also, we take a week off every 13th week in our program. We call it rest week, and we give our clients' bodies just a week to recover completely before we start another training cycle. And when we start the next training cycle, we encourage them back off by 20% from what you did the last benchmark week, and then slowly build back up. And somebody that's been training for years and years with something like a deadlift, it's really important that you back off, because if you just go right back to 100% and try to sustain that for 12 weeks, that's probably too much stress for a body to recover from.
Mhm. The other component to, strength training as you get older is all the other things that go into actually building muscle and strength and recovery. And so sleep becomes more important. Again, like if you're, in your early 20s, like you can probably do a workout with 3 hours of sleep and you won't feel great, but you'll get through it and you can do it. And that's how, like, I remember there being like people that lived right next door to us in college that were on the football team, and they would stay up until like 4 a.m. And I'd be like, you have practice in like 4 hours or 3 hours. They'd be up all night, like playing music really loud. And I just remember thinking, like, that's like, you have to do something. And they still did it and they still performed at a high level. You try to do that with, in your 60s, you're like one bad night of sleep and you just are like wrecked. So you just can't do that. So it's like the more that the older that you get, the more important it is to recover, to sleep, to eat well. Again, you can eat things that maybe aren't as good for your body when you're younger and get away with it. And the older you get, the more important it becomes. And the more you'll feel the effects of poor nutrition, poor sleep, and how those things counteract or, react with your workouts and your ability to progress in your workouts.
Totally. Number two, I had a knee replacement 2 years ago. Are there exercises that I should avoid? Short answer is no. There are not any exercises you should avoid. I've seen people whose range of motion is decreased because of a knee replacement. That's actually almost always the case. Is
Mm-hmm.
goal is to get people back to about 120 degrees of knee flexion. Full normal knee flexion is more like 140, but 120 degrees allows you to do just about everything you want to do in life without restriction. Now, can people with knee replacements do things like squats and lunges, um, and hiking and walking? Absolutely. As long as you've recovered fully, sure. I mean, you can talk to your orthopedic surgeon and ask if there's any specific limitations and why you have those limitations. But as a general rule of thumb, you can get back to doing all the things you want to do. In fact, I would argue that it's a good thing to get back to that sort of lower body strength training, because it's going to build up the muscles around the knee to give you the support you need to be strong and to make that knee replacement last a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we've had numerous clients that have come in that have had either one or two knee
Yeah.
replacements, and they've come in and, really poor range of motion, and they say they feel really weak. They don't feel that great. And, they're even a year or 2 years out, and they start strength training and they're like, wow, like I
Feel
feel
better.
so much
Yeah.
better than I did before.
Mhm.
And so strength training should definitely be done. And again, very slowly introducing load. Again, if you're doing things like the village lunge, like you're doing it high and not with a ton of range of motion to
Mhm.
start, and you're progressively each week, trying to increase that range of motion, but you're going to hold off maybe even more so on adding heavier weights until your form is better. But I think that overall, it's like restoring strength, especially in your lower body, is going to be like the best thing that you can do.
Nice.
Great. So next question. I want a stronger core, but I have back pain. What should I do? So core's training, I think, is really about spinal stability and load transfer. And most people think, when they think of core training, they think of, sit-ups, or they think of crunches, and they have this like idea in their head that like they have to do hundreds of sit-ups a day or crunches a day. And like, that's going to be the thing that gets them their core stronger. And the reality is that you use your core in most things that you're doing strength training. Like you need a lot of core stability and strength to be able to back squat, to be able to deadlift, to be able to overhead press heavier loads. And so you actually are strengthening your core by doing all these exercises, especially when you're bracing properly. Like if you're breathing properly in a deadlift and in a squat and an overhead press, like you get a ton of core activation. So I would say, if you have back pain and say you're like, I can't do deadlifts or I can't do squats or like even planks hurt, there's a lot of things that you can do, like farmer's carries, for example, that are going to require some core stability, but you don't really have to move your spine a lot. And so you should be able to do those if you start off light enough without back pain. And the reality is a lot of people have back pain because they have a weak core, but it's kind of this like vicious cycle. I think
Mhm.
for people, they're like, my back hurts. And most of the time, those things are also tied to sitting a lot.
Yeah.
And so I would also say just moving more and not sitting as often will also just automatically probably make you have less pain in your back, and your core will get stronger just from moving. Anything else you want to add to that?
The best idea, I think the best strategy is to find exercises that don't hurt your back in
Mm-hmm.
your training. So when I work with a new patient that has back pain, I almost always give them something to strengthen or activate their core, but we try to find a variation of that exercise that doesn't hurt. Now that's different person to person. I mean, I've worked with people
Mm-hmm.
there where their back pain is so bad, any sort of activation of their abdominal muscles tends to bring on their pain. So you have to get really creative to find some sort of plank variation or dead bug variation that doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
If you YouTube McGill, McGill, big three, those are three really good core exercises to start with. He has an exercise called the curl up, which is like kind of like a crunching exercise where you're holding your abdominal muscles, but you put your hands under your back in support, a side plank, and then his bird dog. And there's tons of people on YouTube that walk through how to do them. Um, those are great places to start. Now, the squat, research has shown, is just as good at activating the abdominal muscles as a sit up, crunch, or plank. So we have people come into our program and say, "Where's the core training?" I'm like, "Well, you're doing it right now. You're
Mm-hmm.
training your core." And the only I think time when specific abdominal training like crunches or sit-ups would really matter is if you had the goal of like, I want a visible six pack, and you were going to get lean enough to be able to see said six pack. Then yeah, sure, you might want to do some specific core training to really make your abdominal muscles pop. But if you're not that lean, it's like it's not going to be quote unquote functional. The functional strength is going to come from bracing. And Nicole mentioned the phrase load transfer earlier. Load transfer means the ability to, have something in your hands and uh, like a racket, and be able to swing that racket and hit the ball and transmit the power of your hips all the way through to your hands without a lot of movement in your spine, like a lot of stability happening in the spine and transferring the load from the hips up to the hand
Or when you're swinging a baseball bat,
or swinging a
your
baseball bat.
favorite thing to chat about these days.
Huh, it's almost baseball season.
So number 4, what should I eat before and after I work out?
So we've gone through a lot of different iterations of what we eat before workouts. There was a long
Mm-hmm.
time where I was fasting until at least lunch, sometimes till dinner every day, and
Mm-hmm.
I would still work out. I would do strength training and cardio workouts, no food, just coffee, and I was fine. And I think you've done things fairly
Yeah.
similarly and been fine.
Most of the time I didn't fast until dinner, but a lot of times I would fast until lunch. And I started to like read a little bit more specifically around strength training for women. And what I learned was that I think I was under fueling around my workouts,
Hmm.
and it was compromising my ability to build strength and to feel energized when I was doing them. Cause I used to say, like, I'll just drink coffee before my workouts, and and then I'll eat a few hours later, like when I get around to it. And I think I just kind of had like low energy. And then I started being really intentional about getting some protein in before my workouts, as well as some carbohydrates, like if I'm going for a run. And I noticed a huge difference in my energy and my ability to, I think, build muscle and progress versus before when I was just drinking coffee in the morning. And also my stomach feels way better when I have some food in it.
What'd you eat this morning before you worked out?
I had a Jacob bar.
Okay.
Yep.
Jacob
Had
bars are like a protein bar that has nuts, dates, some grass-fed
dried
whey
fruit.
protein,
Hmm.
dried fruit other than dates.
blueberries in the one I ate. It's
Oh,
the berry
nice.
flavor.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find that it gets me some protein. It gives me some carbs. And then I have also been having lattes more often. So I have some of the milk,
Lattes.
which just helps kind of the coffee to not upset my stomach so much first thing in
Mm.
the morning. So I had that before. And then usually after we have some type of like, we'll do Greek yogurt. Sometimes I'll even add in some protein powder to that with some fruit. And sometimes we'll add in some like granola, nuts, basil seeds. And then the other thing that we have most days is scrambled eggs.
Mhm.
And sometimes we'll have sourdough bread.
Mhm.
And our kids are very particular about
Did
the
you
way
say a
their eggs.
smoothie?
And then a smoothie. Yeah, that's the other
Sometimes I
thing
have a
that we have.
smoothie.
Yeah.
Try to get we try to get 30 grams of protein after a workout within an hour.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause that's what research shows is kind of like the time window
Mm-hmm.
that you want to try to hit. For me, before my strength training workouts, I'll often not eat. I'll just have black coffee.
It's not as important for men as it is for women
Wonderful.
because our cortisol tends to go higher
Mm,
before the workouts. And so, in order to curb that, you want to have some type of protein and a little bit of carbohydrates before you work out.
mm,
And that'll just help your blood sugar response as well.
nice.
So,
I've actually started consuming some carbohydrates in like a drink mix during my longer endurance
the
workouts.
momentous fuel, right?
Uh-huh. And I feel good. I don't know that I felt bad before. I think I'm able to push a little bit harder. Um, but only when I'm like an hour plus
Yeah.
for
I
my
was going to
cardio
say,
workouts. If I'm going to go for a walk, like I don't think you need to fuel up with some carbohydrates before you go walk. Um, but yeah, and then I think it's also a very personal thing. If you're somebody that feels nauseous or doesn't feel good when you eat before a workout, just
mhm.
don't eat. You don't have to eat. I think that's the key thing. It's like the the benefit of the workout is going to come from the doing of the workout. So if you're eating before the workout makes it tough to do the workout, don't do it.
Mhm.
If
But
like
then I would say that eating right after becomes
yeah,
even more important, like
yeah,
fueling after. If you're working out, especially again for women, like if you're working out and then not eating until a few hours later, like you're not going to maximize the ability to
build
build
muscle.
muscle. And
Yeah.
so you're really doing yourself a disservice. Whereas, if you for whatever reason can't get in some, food before, another option would be like having a shot of kefir. I tell people is like a really great way to get some protein and some carbohydrates in before you work out. Or like have a cheese stick, have something that gives your body just like a little bit of energy, but maybe doesn't upset your stomach, maybe a few nuts. It doesn't have to be much. Like there's been some days where I'm like, I just need a little something and I've grabbed like a date and a couple of nuts and I've eaten that just because I don't want to overeat and have my stomach be upset before I work out.
All right.
No.
Next question. I'm losing strength but still have endurance. Why is this happening and what should I do? It's really important that we understand that the adaptations that drive endurance and the adaptations that drive strength are diametrically opposed to one another. And the way my college professor described this was it's like a light switch. You can either flip the switch towards building strength and the muscle building pathways within your body, or you can flip it towards building endurance and the kind of like aerobic adaptation pathways within your body. Now, you can drive both of them if you're training different parts of your body. Like if you're doing bench press and then cycling, you're using different muscle groups, and maybe you could have the switch on both directions with a kind of training like that. Or if you do it on different days. So if you're
Hmm.
doing your strength training on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and then your cardio training on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, that'll work a lot better than trying to cram it into the same training session. Now, if you eat enough, make sure you're eating enough protein, that can help to counteract some of it. So maybe this person who's feeling like they're losing their strength, if they're already strength training and already strength training on different days, they may just not be eating enough. If you're somebody that's
Hmm.
like pretty lean and even like skinny, you could probably stand to eat a little bit more, especially more protein, to drive the building processes within your body.
Yeah. And endurance, you're really using more type 1 muscle fibers. Like when you're going for a long run, a bike ride, swimming, um, that's going to be type 1. And your body, as you age, wants more, like it's easier for your body to maintain type 1. And so I think that's why you see, so many people that are able to do things like, running and swimming and biking as they get into their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. But you just don't see as many people like sprinting, which requires more type 2 muscle fibers, or doing really heavy strength training. Because it's harder, because your body wants to get rid of the type 2 muscle fibers and it kind of prefers type 1. It's easier to maintain. And so you have to be really intentional about, building type 2 muscle fibers. And not to say that you neglect the type 1, like we both do endurance exercise.
Hmm.
However, I think it is hard to progress in both. Like we've seen that in our own training where, like when we were training for High Rocks, I think it was like I just wasn't progressing that much in my strength
Hmm.
training. Like, in fact, I was just trying to maintain. So I was still doing strength training. However, it just was like, I'm not going to see the same gains as I would because I'm doing more running. Interestingly, my training partner for the High Rocks that we're training for now, she had an Achilles injury and wasn't able to run, which is why she ended up not doing High Rocks with me in December. And so she purely did strength training 3 days a week for like the last like 6 months, and like basically no cardio. She went from doing a ton of cardio, and she progressed a ton in her strength training. Cause again, I think it's like she shut off that switch and it was like, this is what I'm doing. I'm only focusing on strength training. I'm not going to do any running, really any cardio outside of the little bit of like high intensity cardio that we do in sessions. And she saw a ton of strength gains. So I think
That's
it's
cool.
just something to note. Like it's really hard to improve and push the envelope in both. It's not saying that you can't do both.
Yeah.
It's just probably not realistic to say I'm going to get faster at running and, and build endurance and the ability to go longer and harder, while also saying I'm going to get significantly stronger at the same time.
Yeah.
So next question, is lifting heavy or exercises like deadlifts too risky for seniors or people who are older?
Well, we kind of covered this
Mm-hmm.
earlier, but I I think that life is about risk and taking smart risks. And I feel like one of my jobs as a parent is to teach my kids how to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
And like if my kid's walking on a ledge, like I was took my daughter for a hike yesterday, and she wanted to go walk on this ledge, and I was like, "Yeah, go do it." She's like, "Can you come with me?" I'm like, "No, you can do it." And I mean, I thought through. I'm like, "Well, what's the worst case scenario?" Very unlikely to happen was that she falls off. And if she fell, it was like a 15-foot drop. She probably would have broken something, but she would have lived. Like, well, the worst case scenario is she breaks something. It's very unlikely. It was a nice wide road, like a wide like ledge she wanted to walk across. And so I thought through it. I'm like, the risk is really, really low. The consequence is significant, but not like she's going to die or anything. And so I would encourage you to think through that in your training. It's like, well, what's the risk with this exercise, like a deadlift, for example, especially if you do it intelligently? The research shows that the risk of injury with strength training at large is very, very small compared to other sports. In fact, it's one of the lowest risk of injury activities or sports that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And the consequences or the risk of not doing it, I mean, they're real. Like if you don't strength train, you will lose muscle, you will lose bone density, and really lose ability over time. Now, there
Yeah.
are other ways to build strength within the body. Um, I have seen people not do deadlifts and still be strong. That's definitely a possibility. Now, I think the best way to get stronger at lifting things off the ground is to lift things off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to get stronger at squatting is to squat.
Yeah.
The best way to get stronger at pushing something overhead, which is an essential human movement, is to overhead press and push things overhead.
Well, and the reality is in your life, like you need to be able to do those movements.
Yeah.
Like you need to be able to pick something up off the ground and lift a piece of furniture or a box, or you need to be able to put your suitcase in the overhead bin and
Mhm.
on the airplane, or you need to get something high off a shelf. And if you can't do those things, like you're just going to limit your ability to do things, and you're going to become more dependent on other people,
Yeah.
or you're going to try to do things that you hurt yourself because
Mhm.
you're not strong enough to handle just some of the everyday things that you might want to be able to do.
I'll hear a lot too when people do deadlifts, like, I feel this in my back. And I always have to clarify. I'll say, well, do you feel those muscles working or does it hurt? And they'll usually think for a second and they'll say, well, I feel the muscles working. That's a bad thing, right? It's like, well, no, the deadlift is a back exercise. It's designed to strengthen your back and make it stronger so, so that you can pick things up because those muscles are there for a reason. They're there to support your back and hold it in a nice neutral or lordotic position while you lift things. And that's what the deadlift trains. And the whole point of strength training is to break you down so that you build back stronger in the long run.
Hmm.
That's the premise behind resistance exercise. And I think a lot of people are very afraid to work hard enough to actually break their bodies down
Hmm.
because they don't believe in their ability to heal and recover
Yeah.
from the training, which that's how it works.
Yeah. Well, it leads us right into my next question that we got, which is one of my favorites. Does exercise really matter if it only adds a few extra years to your life?
Yeah, this is somebody on YouTube. It was like a very long existential crisis kind of question
Yeah.
that we boiled down into this.
Yeah.
Yikes. Well, our the pastor of our church always says, he's like, no matter how much kale you eat, uh, you're not going to be able to change the day that you're going to die. And I
Hmm.
love that mindset. It's like we're going to die when we're going to die. The only thing we can really control is how we live our lives.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's very much within our control. So let's even assume that, let's say exercise doesn't actually improve longevity. The research does indeed show that people that exercise live longer. People with more muscle live longer. Like they have better
Hmm.
longevity and it's more than just a few years.
Yeah.
That's what the research shows. But it also is very clear that they live better.
Hmm.
They're able to stay active to avoid living life with disease. And now that we have all these medications and surgeries that are able to prop up end of life, people are living these extra 5, 10, 15 years dependent on medications in nursing homes, like these really miserable lives. And who knows, maybe we'll be there someday. But we're going to do everything we can to be active until the end of our lives, to be healthy until the end of our lives. And we're trying to help thousands of people through our programs to do the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean, like, we can't number our days, like, only God can do that. And so, what we can do, though, is that we can change the quality of our life and how we steward the bodies, I think, that we've been given. And so, if you're so focused on, like, oh, is this going to help me live longer? I think the question is, like, well, how do you want to live the life that you've been given with the days that you've been given? Because they're all numbered. Like, everyone's going to die eventually. And so, instead of, focusing on, like, does it really matter? I would say it does. And it matters significantly because it's like we've seen, family, and we've seen clients, and we've seen family members of clients who have said things like, man, like, if only my parents had been doing this, or my grandparents had been doing this, like, I think it would have drastically changed the last 5, 10, 15 years of their life. And instead, they don't know who they are, or they aren't able to even get out of bed, and, like, they need help doing everything. Like, that's not the quality of life that I want. And
Yeah.
so now, do you have control over everything? No. But I think there are a lot of levers that you can pull. And the earlier you start and the more consistent you are with them long term, I think the better your quality of life and your health span will be.
Love it.
Yeah.
Let's go to the last question, which is creatine and upset stomach causing diarrhea. What should I do? So, one of the only side effects I've seen related to creatine is that it can cause digestive issues in some people.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, that's a result of taking too much too soon, or from taking it without any sort of food, or taking it without enough water.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd recommend at least 8, maybe 16 ounces of water with creatine when you take it. And then start with a very small dose. Like most scoopers of creatine are 5 grams. I would cut that in half initially. So
Mm-hmm.
for the first week, just take a half scoop of it. And that should help to kind of get your body used to that
Yeah.
supplement.
Yeah, I find, like, with any of my supplements, I feel better if I've eaten breakfast and then I put them with something else. Like, I think my body, I'm fine with water and creatine, but often I feel better if, like, I've already had food in my stomach and it's
Yeah.
not like the first thing that hits my stomach in the morning.
And supplements are totally optional.
Yeah.
creatine, protein, multivitamin, if they don't make you feel good, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like I don't think creatine is like must take kind of supplement. I mean, humans have been existing for thousands and thousands of years without taking creatine.
Hmm. Yeah.
um,
But I think it is one of the most effective, safe, and it does have the least amount of side effects
mhm.
compared to a lot of other supplements that people are taking. And I think will give you a lot more noticeable benefits than some of the other things that people take. So, if you're feeling overrun with the amount of supplements that are recommended and it's like, I could take so many things, then I think just multivitamin and creatine, if I had to say like pick two, and maybe the third would be like an omega-3 or fish
Yeah.
oil or something like that would be it if I had to pick. And obviously protein powder if you're not getting enough protein, but I think that generally like those are the things that most people will do well with. And then looking for a really high quality brand that, is going to be clean and pure. And you're actually going to get creatine, not something else that's added in, because they want to decrease the price and produce it cheaply. So I think that wraps
Cool.
up all of our questions. So
Yep.
that was fun. I wonder if Chloe submitted any of the questions.
Mhm.
She likes to ask controversial questions.
She does.
She does.
Does. Well, thanks for listening. We appreciate your support.
And if you have any other questions or things like anytime you comment or leave a review or comment on YouTube, like we love to answer people's questions.
Mhm.
And I think often people are afraid to ask questions because they're going to say like, what if that sounds dumb? But most of the time people are thinking that and they're just afraid to ask. And
Mhm.
so we'd love to answer those questions and give you the resources that we have to help you get stronger.
Until next time, I'm Dr. Matt.
And I'm Nicole Klingler.
Stay strong.